This show is sponsored by eSportsBet, the industry's leading crypto odds matrix. They're still running their World's Prediction Series 2 contest, which is free to enter. You go to the website via the link below, sign up to the competition. They'll give you 1,000 DJT tokens to play with, to make bets with. There's a massive prize pool, 10 million USDT. First place, something like 800,000 USDT. Loads of prizes to be won. It's going to last all year long. Each day you log in, you get another 1,000 up to a cap of 5,000. It's free to enter. Have fun with it. Right. Now, I would actually say there's a bet I'm going to give you here, which is in a few days, you've got the Blast Premier Spring Final. And when we have this match taking place here, ENCE against Big, right? Obviously, ENCE, number 2 ranked team in the world at the moment. The odds aren't enormous for them in this best of 3. Look, they've got 1.394. That's their odds to win, not super high. Big's, this isn't super duper enormous, but it's fairly large, 2.872. So Big's the big underdog here. Here's the thing. Normally, when you get to these type of odds for ENCE, you have to really, in my opinion, think they're like the best team in the world almost to win these matches, or there's an enormous disparity. Now, there isn't an enormous disparity, and ENCE isn't the best in the world. But here's the key reason why I'm saying take the favourite here. I'm going to take ENCE to win, because not only do I think ENCE has more firepower, better IGL, crucially, I think this specific veto, they have absolutely got Big's number, and Big is trapped and has to pick in the maps that ENCE likes, can't veto out maps that ENCE likes, and I think actually ENCE is going to be heavily favoured by other factors than just how good the teams are. So I'm going to say that actually ENCE takes this, in my opinion. Right. It's time for another episode of Snake and Banter, and our guest for this one is going to be Mira, who is an esports editor at dev1ce, because people don't know, they use that weird system where, like, even though this is actually correct journalistic terminology, because they have that thing where Richard Lewis is like the editor at large, and then Mira here is like an esports editor. If you don't understand, basically, I'll give you the quick 5-second free, this could be like a TikTok video teaching all the Zoomers about the terms. Basically, editor at large, I know it sounds confusing, but that actually essentially means he isn't like an editor in an office, just editing everyone's stuff all the time. I'm assuming that's what Mira does here, and instead Richard's more like, it's more like his influence over the fucking staff, or maybe sometimes occasionally he collaborates in some way. Is it something along those lines, Mira?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, I'm involved in the day-to-day operations of our esports editorial. I also help out with our video content, but you know, I'm more, you know, boots on the ground. Whereas, you know, Richard does his own thing pretty much. You know, he's involved in the Pop Flash show as well, and he does some editorials for us and some opinion pieces and some investigative stories, and that's pretty much it.
Yes, so the thing is, essentially, you might know him from when he was at HLTV.org. Obviously, Mira's involved in making the news, but understand that when I say making, yeah, I can understand there can be translation difficulties. I just mean he helps create the actual news medium element. He doesn't actually make the stories. He doesn't get to decide who gets banned, who doesn't, who joins teams, who doesn't. Believe it or not, be great, by the way, be great if he did. Like, every time a fan ever tells me that, like, oh, you jinxed this team by saying that, it's like, brother, I wish I had those powers. If you think I'd just be throwing away random tweets, like, man, there's certain people out there that, like, then their career would be a nightmare. I'll tell you that right now, if I had the power to just influence who wins the game. Like, I've only got the power to make myself look foolish or not as foolish. Right, let's get into this one. So, Mira, the tradition is the guest always starts the topic. So what is your good point? What is the good in CS that we can all enjoy for once?
It was a little bit hard to come up with a good topic for the past week, I would say. We had two international tournaments, but both were a little bit lackluster, I would say. We had the tournament, the Pinnacle Cup tournament, and the one in Dubai, both of which didn't have the best teams in attendance. Some of those teams even had stand-ins, right? So, but one good topic that I'd like to talk about was Heroic finally winning a LAN tournament. It was long overdue, I'd say, and there was kind of this mental block in the team. They had come close before, and there had been tournaments where they looked like a pretty good title contender, but they, you know, choked. For some reason, right? They had lost to Liquid, for example. I think it was in Pro League, and there were other instances where they lost to FaZe, for example, in the Katowice semifinals. So for them to, you know, finally win a LAN tournament, especially against Astralis, is a huge achievement, I would say. But curiously, even though there are now reports coming out saying that they are looking to replace a player. I had heard about this myself, so I think there's some truth.
That Heroic might change a player?
Yeah, they're supposedly interested in getting Yabi from Copenhagen Flames to replace Refresh. I'm not sure if that's still on the table after they won the tournament. I think maybe they were going to have some sort of discussions after this. But it's still curious, right? They just win a LAN tournament. They finally, get over that hurdle, and now they're still considering about replacing a player. But still, getting a win in a tournament like this, even though you didn't have the best teams in attendance, and Big had a stand-in for Crimbo, who had COVID, but still getting a win like this, especially against the Astralis in the final, I still think it was a good achievement for them.
I mean, there's nothing that these small wins are actually pretty important for the development of these kinds of teams. I think, like, kind of reminds me, I guess, of how Cloud9 won that V4 thing, and then they win Dallas. Like, it ramps up. It's good to see that they were. This is kind of them taking care of business, I would say. I think you kind of already prefaced that pretty well. That this was definitely an event that if they didn't win, it would probably look worse. It's almost an event where all the pressure is on them too, in a way, because when you go into this one, if you win, you just did your job, and if you lost, how did you possibly lose this? So, yeah, it would have been a big shame. I didn't know about this refresh rumor though, for Yabby. Although at the major, refresh was performing really poorly. I think at one point he had like a 0.9 rating or 0.88 or something extremely low, and for not being a caller, that's pretty unacceptable. Also, some of the roles he plays are too important to have those kinds of numbers. So, I mean, I guess like for the long-term picture of Heroic, I'd be kind of interested if they got Yabby. I don't know if that fits role to role perfectly, but I think that Yabby showed on Copenhagen Flames that he's an exceptional player.
I think to Mira's point, like I definitely agree. Like, put it this way, I think you were very fair there. Like, these obviously, neither of these LAN tournaments are particularly big. I mean, even IEM Dallas, which had that like not very good talent field, like it's still like IEM. Like, it's like the surrounding elements make it seem bigger. Like, I do think for this particular LAN, like if you're Heroic, like as Maui says, like it's not like you actually gain anything from winning this tournament, like in terms of status. Like, you haven't become like the third best team in the world because you win this LAN or whatever. But I do get the vibe, just from knowing the history of the game, it is super important just to be able to win. Like, if you can't even win these ones, that's when you start to have like all the bad insecurities pile up of like, I guess it's just us then. It isn't even like that the opponent's better. It's because, like you're saying, it's one thing to lose to FaZe. That's all right. That's acceptable. If you could lose this LAN to like Big and Astralis, like that essentially proves it's just you. You're in your own head. You just can't win for some reason when it's like the pressure moment. I mean, to be fair as well, they still haven't really done it at like the proper big LAN with the big crowd and all that jazz we're all waiting for. But I agree, it's still meaningful to win this tournament, just like actually when Maui said when Gambit won the V4 tournament. Again, it wasn't a massive tournament, etc., but it does matter. Like, it sort of proves something, if anything, even if it just proves that you got an issue on stage. That's good to at least know what to work on. At least it's not just like pure coincidence you had two LANs and then they didn't work out if they were the majors or whatever. So I think it's a complicated topic, because I do sort of think, on the one hand, I get why some people, put it this way, if a mutual friend of ours, Mira, if I was to bring like Tommy on, he definitely wouldn't believe at all in the principle of like, it matters like if you win or lose, because he would just, like, he doesn't believe in jinxes. He's like a super hyper rationalist. But here's the problem, even though I would agree with him, like like there's no physical tangible way in which winning this LAN or losing it helps you win another LAN. There is, like, in terms of how psychology works and how people tell themselves the story of their lives, I do think it's actually a big deal that if you go to a smaller tournament and you blow that as well, it actually will all build up in your mind. Like, back in the day in 1.6, teams used to do this intentionally. If you were like a second or third best team in the world, but you never beat number one, if there's ever a LAN with half decent money that they're not attending, you make sure you definitely go there to win and psychologically get over the idea that like we can win still. It's not just like that one team.
Yeah, and I spoke with Caden before the major, and I was talking to him about, some of the mental struggles that the team was dealing with, and they said that during those high pressure moments, like for example during the semifinal of a major against G2, like the communication in the team tended to get a little bit weird, and that's why the team wasn't performing at the best level in those situations, and that's why he wasn't performing at his best level in those situations. So I'm very curious to see after this win, and whether or not they change a player, right, whether they'll finally be able to get some stability. And they'll be able to reach the heights that many expected them to, that they haven't been able to.
I also just love as well, Maui, that after Acadian went out of his way to make that one match at Blast, like, this is the one that's going to be bragging rights for years. He's actually won every bloody game since then, but because he stupidly said that's the one that counts for the years, he's absolutely done himself. Like, if he'd actually just let it ride and just let every match counts and whoever wins more overall, like, that's what I'd have done, Maui. I'd have sort of built like an insurance policy anyway, because he's fucked himself, and he's actually wrecked himself. That's the one time, you idiot.
Yeah, especially because the crowd was against it.
I know, exactly. Everything about it's so bad, isn't it? Because what's mad about that is, here's what's so sad about that scenario as well. I know why Cadian did it, and the reasons genius. One, that was the worst version of Astralis. It's the one you're most likely to beat. Two, like we're saying, you're in Denmark. This is going to be the moment where you don't just beat them. You sort of take the home crowd from them. Like, everything's set up here. The problem is, in the end, he ended up actually engineering some mad, like, carry finale level nightmare trauma scene for himself that will now probably haunt them for years to come. Like, dude, if they ever go back to another event with a Danish crowd, like, all you need is Astralis to be, like, half decent and there's a chance. Like, there's just a chance, isn't there? Like, because that whole topic's so silly to me. That's one thing, actually, before we wrap this up here, I would actually like your thoughts on that. Because one thing I find a bit weird, I haven't talked to Cadian about this just because he's like if people haven't noticed, ever since the whole fucking Hunden thing, he sort of like keeps the press a little bit at arm's distance now. And it's like he has to sort of control the environment that you go in. He's not going to do the old style where you can just throw anything you want at him. So one thing I've actually wondered about is this dude is, even though I know that he totally gets it because he's from the old school of like bantering people. It doesn't matter if you take a loss, it's all part of the show. Dude, I don't know if the rest of his team are on the same wavelength though. I get the vibe some of those guys. Like, it actually makes it, they maybe don't want all that scrutiny, you know?
Yeah, they're definitely more quiet than Cadian, you know, and I think Cadian also does this on purpose, you know, like some coaches in football do. Like they want to get the attention towards them, right?
Yeah, Mourinho style,
off the other players, right? Yeah, like Mourinho has done in the past, you know. And Cadian, by doing this, by being, you know, the villain, by taking on the villain role, he's taking some of the pressure off his teammates who maybe can't handle the pressure or the heat the same way that he does, because Cadian has been around the block, you know, for many years, you know. Someone like Tessus, for example, someone like Stown, maybe they just are not interested in that banter game, you know. They just want to play the game, and that's it, you know.
Sure.
But Cadian, you know, he takes it very, very well.
Yes. Oh, I could totally imagine Stown or someone being like, "Oh, you a Cadian?" And everyone's saying, "Fuck me." He'd just be like, "I was born in it, molded by it. Everyone hated me when I was 17 or whatever." You know, like, fucking, this guy was the original hated Danish player, right? Okay, Maui, what is your good point? And oh, by the way, get ready, guys. This one's actually, it's not about like some hors d'oeuvre they served Maui backstage at some fucking event. It's actually some real shit we can all enjoy. So come on then, what's the good? What's good this time?
Mine is that just the fact that we're seeing tier 2 lands again seem to pop up. I think that even though the quality of the Get Dubai event and the Pinnacle Cup wasn't the highest, I mean, I think that's a good thing, actually. I'm glad to see a tier 2 land space that's coming back again. I think because before, I guess the only ones since COVID started have been V4 and basically these couple games, and I guess you would want to include the ESL Impact, the women's tournament too. Those kind of events just have such an instrumental role in building up the scene and giving teams like Heroic, you know, who haven't won in a stadium or at a big event, a chance to, you know, taste victory there. And I think those kind of things really matter because also usually they involve some kind of like local team. Like I think Finest would have been the team at Pinnacle. I guess I don't know if they're local. I guess they had a couple Swedish people, right? They had a couple people from that region, but like the Get event invited, or they had
some team from some, like, I can't remember where they're from, but they were like sort of obscure lineup, right?
They were supposed to have like Nasser, and then they changed out a bunch of players, like a Middle Eastern team essentially. Okay. But it's always cool to see those teams get a shot at taking on the big dogs, and I think those kind of experiences also help in growing the scene, because obviously you don't really want to just bring a Nasser to some kind of Cologne type event for just no reason. But with how the circuit has been looking, it really does seem like the only tournaments that have been viable have been either super big stadium event or online event, I guess. That's how I put it. And so to see a couple of these pop up now is just really healthy for the scene. Also, it's healthy for the broadcast scene too, because it gives people who maybe wouldn't get the broadcast experience at a Cologne or a Katowice a chance to, you know, flex a little bit.
Yeah. What do you think, Mira? Jump in.
I completely agree. I think it's what we used to get back in the day with the DreamHack Open events. Like, for example, it gave teams like Gambit, for example, the old Gambit team, a chance, you know, to prove themselves online. You know, it gives some teams like Finest that probably wouldn't have the opportunity to attend some tier 1 LAN events, you know, the opportunity to show themselves online and to prove themselves. But I think a lot of tier 1 teams will look at what happened with Big, for example, and maybe they will think twice about attending an event like this in the future, right? Because I don't even know if Big is going to attend the Blast event with Crimbo. I doubt it. because the two events are so close to one another that I don't think there will be enough time for Crimble to recover and to travel to Lisbon to compete in the tournament. So, I think teams will approach this sort of tier 2 events with caution, because there's a likelihood that, one of them will get COVID or maybe more than one. And because of that, they will be, at a disadvantage going into a major tournament, like, for example, an IEM Cologne or an RMR or Blast or the Brass Spring Finals, which, are more important than the Pinnacle Cup, right? So I think, some teams will look at what happened with Big and maybe they will think twice before attending an event like this, especially if it's so close to a tier 1 event like a Blast or IEM Cologne.
Yeah, I agree with Maui's point completely. I actually think tier 2 scene is like super important. I think for everyone, because the thing as well is this, right? In my opinion, I always was of the opinion, even years and years ago, that online play is just, it's not even that it's a bit off. It's like, it just is irrelevant to LAN play, unfortunately. There's just so little you can take from it. Like, essentially, the stronger opinions you have from online play, the more it tends to fuck you when you do the LAN analysis. But the problem is you need a second tier after the big LANs that we do. And so there has to be a LAN circuit. It has to be actual LANs where those teams earn the points and earn the spots and get invites and show the quality, etc. Because if we just do it from online play, it's just going to be too hit and miss for me. And then in terms of like the idea of actually having these tier 2 LANs, it's like I said earlier, like in the same way as back in, early CSGO, but a lot more in 1.6, you would have events where it's like, right, I'm the third best team. So since like the other top 2 teams aren't attending, I'll go to this LAN, I'll pick it up and win the money, right? It was mainly for money back then. But for me, another aspect that helps is, like I alluded to before, it also helps you figure out stuff like if you don't have the same exact, say, 16 teams at every big LAN, it means that you actually get like to test matchups in a different way as well. Like, for example, at this tournament here, nobody thinks Big and Astralis are better than Heroic, but maybe it turned out Big actually just directly matches up really well with Heroic, and maybe they could have beaten them twice, and that could have been an interesting angle. So I think that helps, because obviously if you think about it, the better we get like the seeding at big tournaments, the less likely it actually is that you just get everyone get to play each other. Like, it's more likely if you're ranked 13th and I'm ranked 14th, we're not going to meet in the tournament unless it's like the last place match or something. So actually it also helps the scene sort of figure out how good people actually are. I think even doing it without pressure is a good angle as well. I'd obviously throw in a joke, like, and shout out to ESL for ensuring that we had this nice period with just 3 tier 2 events. We didn't want to put too much pressure on the squads, didn't want to put too many of the big, you get the joke, whatever. Luckily they're just fucking, the joke is how they made the tournament. You don't need my fucking humour anymore on that one. And then the last one I would say is this: there's actually another angle on this event particularly that I think's mega underrated, which is back in the old days, you would just look at the Dubai event, for example, and go, well, you're only going to that for money. You're going because it's so much prize money, and also, spoiler, they've almost certainly probably given you like a way better package for like the travel and accommodation and stuff. But that's actually not a minor reason, because what I'll do is I'll draw a quick comparison here. One of the saddest moments ever in CSGO, literally for me, was the DreamHack Masters Las Vegas event they did in 2017, because when that event absolutely failed to get any audience whatsoever, and it had that terrible scenario where, even though it had a 360-degree stage, because they thought they were going to actually have all the audience and they were going to do that thing where you have all 4 angles, they had so few, they had to do one angle effectively. It was just like the families of, I think, like SK Gaming or something, like the Brazilians, I think, had their family members there. They just had to do that camera shot the whole time. And the reason why this story sucks is because I thought, right, if esports really is getting on the brink of being huge, that'll be the moment you'll realise it, because Vegas, if you don't know from combat sports, it is the combat sports capital of the world. The reason why that is the best spot is because the premise goes, you go for the fight that you bought the tickets for, but then you also go because it's Vegas, you get to have like a weekend with your boys or whatever. That is like a super entrenched concept in sports culture. So I thought,
LeBron
right,
wants to build a franchise there, an NBA franchise.
Doesn't surprise me for similar reasons. And so the sad thing is, I thought, right, well, if esports is what people claim and it's as big as it is, this should be one of the prime locations in the US. This should be like a permanent stop. We always have an event. And so when no one went there, it actually showed something different to me about how the scene works. So what I'll say is this: believe it or not, on the talent and the player side, an event like this Dubai event is way more appealing than you would think from the competitive angle. Because like I'm saying about the Vegas thing, if you're a player, you want to go to fucking holiday to Dubai. Like if I go to this event and I haven't got an event right after, I'd just stay for the bloody week afterwards. Like it's a free Vegas vacation at that point in time. You just pay for the hotel. Like, these are places you actually want to go to. There's a lot of events that people don't know in esports because of the history of the game, where it's like you're in like Katowice. Spoiler, I'm obviously famous for not liking Poland anyway. Katowice is the shit end of Poland, mate. Like, there's way better places in Poland than that. Like, if you go to Warsaw, you can have an event 100 times better stadium than the fucking Spodek. So the point is, the rare times we actually get events in cool locations, I hope they can actually continue, because, spoiler, like, there's actually a quality of life element that could be cool. We're going to events there.
It is, yeah. I mean,
I bet that's a spot you want to go to, right, Maui? You'd like to go to Dubai, right?
I was actually, this was, I guess, whatever. This event was actually originally going to be run by Face It, and I thought I was actually maybe going to work this event. But then I think it changed hand because they had the contract still, like, you could still bid for it. So Star Ladder actually got it over Face It, I think, at some point. And, I thought I was going to go to Dubai, and I thought it was going to be a fun time. So yeah, of course, it would be a really cool, unique place. I've never been to the Middle East before, so yeah, I would have loved it.
I haven't got many chances left, mate. It's like I always told people about 10 years ago, I always wanted to go to Iran. Although, funny enough, Trace and fucking Carrigan have convinced me they're on that one. But spoiler, I told people 10 years ago, I don't think I'll be doing that one. That was probably not on the bucket list. That's probably how you actually get to kick the bucket if you go on that one. So, right, let's move on. We'll go to mine now. So my one for the good is actually a weird one. You're going to think this angle's really weird, but it's actually the fact that ENCE was so good without having Spinks. Because obviously people will know at IEM Dallas, they finished second. But even you have to understand, like, they had no business being in the final without their best player, especially because they're such a budget org and the rest of the players are fairly inexperienced that, like, on paper, even with that depleted field, like, you're supposed to almost be hard carried by Spinks. That's how good a player he is. So I think, not only is it a really good sign for, like, the core of the team and the IGL that you can do it without, in theory, like, remember, people are going to compare Spinks to, like, the Zewoos, the Bits of the world. What would fucking Vitality have been without Zewu back in the day? They would never have had a chance of winning these games. So that's a mega sign already. And then secondly, the other reason why, it's a little bit darker, but it's a key reason, I don't think they're going to have this player after this year. I think as soon as this contract runs out or gets towards the end, he is going to be bought by an enormous club. You pick out the names, FaZe, Vitality, G2, all the ones you can imagine that speak English and have loads of money. Like, this is going to be like when my boy Suarez used to play for Liverpool. Everyone who's actually a Liverpool fan knew, like, you better enjoy this now because it ain't going to last. Like, there's no world where he's playing 15 years here, so let's just enjoy that we're getting away with this found money because he's going. So to me, the idea that there actually might be, like, a real future for this core, even if he leaves, like, obviously you're not going to get someone as good, but you throw another, like, good rifler in there, this could still be a really good team, dude. This could be like a top 10 team still.
I completely agree. No, but everyone keeps saying that ENCE has this weird play style, and Spinks is weird. Is a player that is hard to figure out. But I think it's still very impressive that they were able to do as well as they did. Without their star player. With someone like Snacks, who was one of the best players during the first half of last decade, but who hasn't been able to perform at the same level in previous years. I still think it's super impressive, and it speaks to the quality of Snappy as an in-game leader. I spoke to him before the major, and he said that there have been periods in my career where I've been underrated and periods in my career where I've been overrated. And he said that there are many people in many organizations and many teams out there that are completely blind to the talent that is out there, and he made it look like a lot of people in charge of some of those big teams out there. Evil geniuses, like, for example, that they're just not picking up the right talent, right? And for him to say that people out there are blind, I'm very curious to see what kind of job he would be able to do if he didn't have this team. If he was picked up by, for example, by an organization like Evil Geniuses, for example. I'm very curious to see what he'd be able to do with that.
For sure. Yeah, by the way, if people want like a random example, I'll give you one from recently. This is recent memory just to show you how bad esports still is. I had an org, I won't say which org, but I told this org, like they asked me, like name a few names that like it's possible we might be able to get. So one of the names I threw out there was Jacob, right? Who obviously is still in the scene. He plays for the Apex team if people don't know. But like if you just go and look at his game, it looks like he's just as good as he always was. His game still looks like it works. He's just a good player. I always thought he was underrated, right? They weren't interested in Mauisnake because they were just like, hey, Jacob, he cares about him or whatever. Meanwhile, the same org, are you ready for the punchline, was asking me like, you think Forrest's still got it? And I'm
Oh my
like,
God.
fuck you guys. Seriously, just fuck everything about you guys. Like, don't ask me that question. Look, ask someone else that fucking stupid ass question. Why are you asking me that shit? It's like you're trying to antagonize me. So, okay, anyway, what was your thoughts, Maui?
I think the system that ENCE put in place with kind of a lot of calls out of spawn, kind of just like layered utility to just do like get into set pieces. That kind of style I think is pretty fitting for having a stand, because if you just have him memorize, say, 5 plays for each map, you can really accomplish a lot. You can have really comprehensive T sides, and I think that what was really cool about when I looked closer at ENCE's demos for this tournament is that sometimes they would just switch spots on a map because I think Snax wants to do something, and everybody was so capable at switching to a new spot. Like for example, Deha is usually the guy that plays kind of mini outside rifler on Nuke, and sometimes Snax would just take that spot from him and push Deha to say like an A player or something, and then Deha would just get a couple kills there. So it didn't even matter that he was out of his comfort zone. I think Snax probably just had a good spawn, said I want to do this, and then it almost showed how versatile some of the guys are on ENCE when they're taken out of their comfort zone. So not only is it, I think, a testament to how good Snappy's system is, but I actually think I have a new and greater appreciation for some of the individuals on the team not named Spinks. Like, this was a great tournament for Hades. Like, he was so mobile with the op at this one. He was hitting a lot more shots than I'm used to seeing.
And he didn't have a good major.
Yeah. So it was a nice bounce back for him in a way. And then you get like Matt. This was actually a solid tournament for Madden. I'm not going to say it was like excellent, but I thought he played a little bit better too. I think everybody just played with a little bit more of a freeness because it's kind of like the dead team symptom where you basically is like, let's just screw around a little bit more. And I think that it actually suited a lot of these players to play outside of themselves.
And it's curious, to see, Snax coming in for another team and winning an event out of nowhere, or not winning in an event, but doing this well, like he did, like he had done with Mouse, in New York, right? So it's curious to see him perform this well without pressure.
I want to say on the flip side, this is a little bit embarrassing for some of the teams that lost to them though. Like G2, FaZe, Furia, these are teams that are supposed to be elite, if not near elite, and so for them to lose to a team with a stand, and Snax was playing pretty well. Like on the Nuke game that he played against FaZe was fantastic, but a lot of those maps, I think Snax just did kind of all right. And so if you're one of those teams and you're thinking, I mean, what's going through your head after that? Just losing to a team where they lost their best rifler, I would feel kind of embarrassed. Actually, I hope they do feel embarrassed.
Thing is, though, even though I will say this case is a bit more tenuous, because, like, let's be real, Snax isn't like a top player now, and even when he plays, like, when he was on Anonymous, I think he was the decent player. Like, put it this way, he's not as washed as he looked at the end of VP, but he's definitely nowhere near, like, a top player, like his name would imply. I will say, that one's a bit more tenuous, because obviously, in theory, like, great players can have, like, a flashback game or something like that. But I also do think the other problem as well is, it's like, we've had to, like, refine our terminology, so we don't anymore just say LANs. Like, we now do it as, like, a studio LAN for the LAN without the crowds. Like with the Heroics of the world win those ones, we don't count it as like your land proven in the sense of a major. We refer in the terminology. We almost need to do that for stand-ins, because it reminds me back in the day, like ECS, because Navi wasn't in it, Simple could just stand in for anyone and drop 40 and win an online game. And it's like, I don't even know if we should be calling these stand-ins anymore. Like in that case, like when we say stand-in, we nearly always mean like the player coming in is way worse, probably shouldn't be at this level. It's like this was one of those cases where it almost like blurs some of those lines. You know what I mean? Like it's different. Like I give NiP way more credit when they have their stand-ins and they do well, and it's a fucking academy player than like, at least this guy was a legend once, he can have a one game where he throws it back, It's not quite as embarrassing as like I say, for just some academy player styles. Or like put it this way, in my opinion, it's way more embarrassing if you're Astralis that like your academy talent player plays on bloody Copenhagen Flames. Like that looks way sillier, doesn't it? It's like that guy was on your fucking academy squad. Like I'm not even blurring the lines on that one. It's real. Right, let's move on then. So obviously now we're going to go to the next section, which is the bad points. So Mira, what was your bad point?
I wanted to go over ZTR's comments, talking about NiP, ZTR's comments while in Dubai, and the handling of the device situation by NiP. While interviewed on the broadcast, ZTR said that it was obviously hard for the team to deal with device leaving the team, and many people assumed that it was it had just jumped the gun, and that just revealed that device was in fact leaving the team, and that was in part because of the messy situation that NiP has created about dev1ce. He's been out since the end of last year, and we haven't had any updates about his situation. Obviously, I respect mental health, and I've had the opportunity to talk to multiple players who have had mental health issues. I interviewed Kirby only recently, Kenya's last year, so I completely respect what dev1ce is going through. With that said, it's very difficult to understand why NiP, a professional organization, are just pretending that the dev1ce doesn't exist, right? They just don't say anything about the situation. They don't say anything about the future of the team. And, every week there's a new rumor coming out about dev1ce, right? At some point, NiP will have to comment on this. They'll have to say, we're going to finish out the year, for example. We're going to finish out the season with this roster, because Hampus recently said that this is the lineup that I want to stick with. And there have been cases in the past where Hampus has made it clear that the team and the organization are not on the same page every time, right? When the team was testing a lot of academy players, I know that Hampus appeared on the HLTV Confirmed podcast, and he said that I'm not really a fan of this. So, and now him saying that this is the lineup that I want to stick with, and the NiP organization on Twitter calling ESIC the best opera in the world for some reason, right? I think it's just too weird, and I just wish, that the NiP organization would come out and say, give us an update, because, it has been too long at this point.
The dev1ce angle is something that I almost just have to believe, because it's just all rumors now and it's a lot of speculation, but I almost have to believe it's something beyond just having a bad breakup, because I don't know how I've had some pretty awful breakups in my time, and I don't know how you're down for 6 months not working. That's just excessive for me. I almost have to think something else is going, there's been other rumors he just doesn't want to play with NiP, that he wants to join back with Astralis, that he doesn't like how NiP, their style of calling is, so he doesn't want to be a part of it. Any of those, I would almost just take at this point over it's a breakup, because I think the breakup is the most confirmed part of his absence, and it's almost just too. Yeah. I mean, I've wanted to take breaks from life when I've had bad ones, but maybe a month, maybe 2, maybe. But I usually just keep on. I don't know. People react to everything differently, but for me, 6 months is just so long. I don't understand how he's just burning a hole in the NiP wallet right now, and I would assume he's getting paid probably half salary, bench salary, which is probably still a load of money. It's probably most of the world would be incredibly happy to make what he's making right now. So yeah, I think that's a good point you bring up, that I think NiP do need to release something, because I actually think that if everybody's on board with this NiP roster just working together as the 5-man, obviously not ZTR but Hampus instead, then they've shown some really impressive results. Even with a guy that's not, in my eyes, a quality opper in ESIC. I think what he's doing is actually fitting the system pretty well. It doesn't make sense that he's wielding the op while doing it, but at the same time, I think that the top, the playoff results that they're seemingly finding with consistency is, that's nothing to scoff at.
I'll take the last point you bring up first. On the whole thing of essentially, what could be this bad that's making dev1ce just take, now we're past 6 months now, guys. Now we're going, remember, how long does your bloody contract even last? It's going to, at this point, you could possibly end that you spent less time not playing for NiP than playing for NiP on your NiP contract. Eventually it gets ridiculous to me. Even if the person really is having problems, then eventually for their own good, you have to sort of remove them or tell them to take a sabbatical or go away and make it clear to everyone in the team you're not playing anymore. But I'll give you one angle I just thought of there, because here's why to dev1ce specifically though, Maui, it might be a different scenario. So there's 2 angles. One is just, if you look at his career, he actually has a very unique career. He's not someone who's basically ever been a free agent. He doesn't go anywhere. He just stayed in the same squad. He had a brief period, if people don't know, in 2013 when he was out of the Copenhagen Wolves lineup and then came back. That's it. Aside from that, he just stays in the team forever. The team shifts orgs, but he's always in the same squad, the same core, and they just move between orgs, and he doesn't have to think about this. All he's thinking about is, who do I get into my team, or how well is the team doing now. So to be fair, he is someone who never had like actually the old school Counter-Strike career of like you move around a bunch of different teams, you play for the 3 different orgs in Sweden, or you move to a different experimental team. He's just been in one team his whole career. So first of all, I could imagine he might actually like freak out a bit more when he finds guess what, the grass isn't always greener, and sometimes when you go to a different squad, sometimes the problem there is you don't even get to address the issues you wanted to level up on because if all these basic things aren't even in place, they don't have a great IGL, your coaching staff's a bit who knows, and you've got a million factors. So I can already see how that could make him wig out.
But they were supposed to be 5 steps ahead, right?
That's true. That's the part that makes you look bad, obviously, yes. Listen, I'd wait a while before I give any commentary really on comparing Astralis and NiP, but that's just me. Then there's also the other angle, which goes like this. So when you're saying that, Mauisnake, like, it can't just be a breakup. Here's the scenario, though. Everyone's done things when they're in a different state of mind that they wouldn't always agree to. So here's an example, Mauisnake. What if everyone was out having an epic party night, drinking beers, shots, fucking all night, and, you get to that point where you're in a booth with a guy, all right, I know what, we should just get a van and just drive across the country or something. Well, imagine, right, that you just kept the party going too long, or you get hair of the dog the next month. So the next thing you know, you're in the van, you're 2 stops down the string, and you've signed up for the whole summer. I can imagine at that point in time, you might sober up for a moment, Maui, and lucidly come up and go, what? I'm left Astralis for this. Like, there's a world where eventually, like, I get the vibe, dude, that major really was just like, fuck, what have I actually done? Like, this team's just, it's all right, but like, we're not going to win. Like, what have I done? Like, yeah, I think it almost like that must have been the moment of lucidity to me. That was like the sobering moment of like, essentially, the way that major ended was like the moment in the nightclub at 3 a.m. when they turn the lights on and you go, oh shit, I've got to get home. What do I do with my life? And you just leave immediately with sort of like a sense of social shame of like, what are we even doing in this club? Okay, and then the one other thing I would say is this, just on the initial point Mira said, I actually totally agree with his characterization as well. Maybe you just have to have been in media long enough to know like how things are phrased and how people take them. My first assumption when I saw that dude was like, there's no story here at all. He just means he's fucked up the tense, and he means when dev1ce left previously, hence why people like him are in the team now. Like, I remember seeing that and just think, there is no story here, there's no scandal, it's just unfortunately, people are going to take the tense, which by the way is even a fairly complicated one in English, they're going to take that and think he means that he's leaving now, and he's accidentally leaked it now. Like, spoiler, of all the people likely to leak it, I doubt it's the fucking stand-in guy from the Academy squad. Like, it's not going to be him, is it, of all the people? Look, I know there's a lot of bad stuff in esports, but that would be a pretty big faux pas, I think.
To be clear, he later came out with a comment on Twitter and said that it was just a poor choice of words, and he was just talking about dev1ce, stepping down from the team because of his mental health issues.
Sure.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that and heard it, I've talked to ZTR enough from doing Academy stuff and at events, and he just messes things up like that. Like, that's just his grasp of English, not getting the better of him there.
And
I will say, though,
comfortable on camera.
Yeah. One thing you should watch out for in the future, though, because even though I don't want to live in a world where we have to think about this, it is going to become a factor because of this exact case. Spoiler, the new way that if a player ever has any issue with an org with any time, they're all just going to say they have mental health problems. Because it's you cannot question it. It is such a hot button topic, and even to question it feels uncomfortable because, what if they really do? It's like, so it's unfortunately, look, think about the coach bug scenario. I know everyone wants to believe no one would ever just say that as an outrageous lie, though. Like, spoiler, some people would. So just watch out, because it'll become a lot more common, I'm afraid. That'll be the new go-to thing that people will say, basically. Right. What was your bad point, Maui?
Yeah, mine is that there's just a handful of rosters that I think could really use this guy, and I'm not really loving his current project, and that's XANTARES on Eternal Fire. I think that he proved with what he did in the online era for Big that 1, he's incredibly capable at playing on an English-speaking team, and 2, he's a phenomenal talent, and he's proving that still day after day when he's playing with Eternal Fire. He's just by far their best rated player. I think right now, last 3 months, he has over a 1.2. The dude's just, when you watch them play, it's like he's the guy that pretty much hard carries so many rounds with multi-frags over and over again. But he definitely could fit on a team like a G2 and I don't think he's really being talked about because, it's, commendable that he wants to play with other Turkish players and make this Turkish super team. But if this guy wants to compete on the biggest stages again, and if people want an upgrade in firepower, this would be the guy to do it right now. And I'm sure that he's even learned more while still maintaining an incredibly strong mechanical grasp on the game. I'm pretty much, I don't think it's even a stretch to say this dude is still, in my eyes, and probably many people's eyes, top 5 most mechanically talented rifler in in the scene right now. I don't even feel on edge at all saying that. I think that's just that you just watch any game he's playing. His crosshair, is just micro adjustments. The speed at which he flicks his rifle is just it's unbelievable, and it's so consistent too.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he's obviously a very, very good player. Even when he was playing with Big, and he had some issues at the beginning. To getting adapted to communicating in a different language, but he was still a very capable rifler all the time. But having decided to come back to a Turkish project. But the thing is, that team is an okay team, top 30 team. They were able to go to the major. But the thing is, you don't see anyone coming, for example, from the academy team who just lost all games in the academy league, right? Who can come into the team and give XANTARES a hand, right? So it does raise a few questions about the future of the team if they don't have a massive upswing in form from some of the players, which I don't think is going to happen, right? Who are they going to pick up, right? Because the Turkish scene took a big hit when Valorant came out. They are one of the hottest scenes in the Valorant community. They have Sinad, one of the best players in the world, right? So I just think that it's going to be very hard for them to find a player that can, take the team to another level. And if they continue to struggle, it's going to be hard, to see XANTARES compete at the top again.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows when they even made the Eternal Fire squad, it's pretty much what everyone expected, which is like, it's got some firepower, so that'll be the fun angle. Like, can all the stars go off at the same time? But everyone could see the obvious problem is no, like, traditional IGL. Like, they're going to obviously suffer in that regard. Like, I do think if you look at the team, they definitely have suffered from that. Like, basically, like, I do think part of the problem they have as a squad as well is, like, in their team, it's like all super teams. It doesn't really work. Like, you notice, like, Woxic, Calyx, and Xantares don't all drop 25 at the same time and win the game. Like, actually, the dream premise doesn't really play out. Like, as that Maui says, it's basically just XANTARES largely, and then the others contribute here and there, depending on the map or the circumstances. And I actually agree. I think actually XANTARES has wasted his talent. I get the vibe of why you might want to stay. It's a bit like the Henny fucking Lucas thing. I get why they keep trying to play together in their careers. It's just if I were, like, essentially, because I'm not them and I don't have all the sentimental reasons in my brain, I just wish they wouldn't. I wish it's like Football Manager and I could just put, like, Henny back on Fury and say, you have to play there. Sorry, like, I'm the manager in this case. So in the same case, yeah, I agree with you, Maui. I wish XANTARES not only fuck Big, he should be on a better team than Big. Like, I actually even think the Big thing might have ruined this for us. Because think about it, the others have all been on the other teams now. Woxic was on Cloud9 and Mouse. Calyx even was on Envy. Well, the reason why we've never had XANTARES is because the only team he went to was Big, right? And I actually think that might have scared him away because that wasn't just speaking in English. They were trying to do like a super tactical fucking German level, like, this is how the team will run. Like, of all the teams that a guy like XANTARES probably isn't going to enjoy, like, fitting into, like, forget the language, that already culturally is going to be really uncomfortable. If you put him in like a really loose team, dude, I think he would love playing an English speaking team. Like, this guy could contribute so much because, as you say, the one part that was never a joke was his skills were always legit. The eye test always checked out for this player. Yeah, maybe he's not going to be like, here's the real problem. Like most fan bases, it's Turkish fans trying to make him sound like he was Shocks, is why people dissed him. If you actually take out that stupid like example and you just judge him against normal players, he is a really good player. He's like back in 1.6 where we did used to have the players, the Musambanis, etc., where you'd have like one player from a country who was just straight fire. And yeah, the rest of the country isn't as good, but you watch for that one player. It's like got novelty value to it, you know. So I've always thought this was a good player. And unlike in 1.6 where the Oscars and the Musambanis of the world were locked in their scene, you don't have to be anymore. You actually can, for real, just go to one of these teams. Like here's an obvious example, right? Imagine they'd taken XANTARES as their stand-in for ENCE instead of fucking Snacks. Who wouldn't want to see that lineup play? That would be an interesting project immediately, right? So I want him to go to that sort of a team and like make an influence. Because if you looked, I've looked up now, he's 26 years old, but like he's not a standard 26 though, because he's got mad wear and tear. He's been playing like LAN since 2015, according to HLTV. Like he's got a lot of years under his belt. So I think if you're someone like XANTARES, you're probably not going to play 10 years more. Like, I'd do one last adventure. Like, finish this project up. It's obviously not going to do that great, is it? Give it to the next major or something. But after that, like, try one last run, because actually it's the other guy that was in his former team, Big, that I think sucks in this case. This is going to be like the Tabson story. When his career ends, on the one hand, yes, it'll be cool that he stayed in this team that he believed in his country and blah, blah, blah. That's all great for that angle. But for the actual competitive side, everyone will always say, like, oh no, the Tabson player was actually a lot better than like his Wikipedia shows. Like, well, I'll have to do that, won't we? Because he stayed in like a not as good team. So I have a similar vibe about XANTARES. I think at the end of his career, we might actually regret that he never played in like a FaZe clan or something. Because he could. I think he really could.
Yeah, he'd be so sick on like a liquid. Also, just I mean, any top fringe top 10 team right now that speaks English just could use this guy, and they would improve instantly. He could go 1-for-1 on so many teams and just make things better. I mean, also think about like Vitality for Masuda. Oh my god, there's just even thinking about these things gets me excited. Just the prospect of XANTARES being on one of these rosters and just making it's the final piece right there.
Or maybe an OG, something.
That's a good one.
Like that.
Yeah.
I think it could be a good fit for him.
Yeah.
Especially because here's the thing, dude. If you actually think, that's why I give like the ENCE standing example as well. If you think of the people that we'd be putting him instead of, he's better than all these people. Like, he's better than anyone on OG. He's better than these fucking people in these squads we're talking about. Anyone on EG team, look, just put him on these teams. Like, it's almost certainly not going to be the wrong move. Like, I wouldn't worry about it. You can always rely on this show for some spicy takes. But you know what? If you want more in the crypto world, well, using the link in the description box below, my referral link, you can, if it's your first time depositing, get a 50% deposit bonus on any crypto up to 200 USDT. So check it out. Right, for my bad point, I've actually phrased this very carefully so that you can all have a thought as well without getting scared / being killed. So already that's a fucking great setup right there, Mira. You're wondering what the hell I'm going to say right now, but I'm actually going to keep it reasonable, like I said, because I'm going to phrase it very carefully. The bad point isn't Imperial, full stop, boom, boom, there's the joke. No, the bad point is this. It's the blind spot that I think Imperial has created, and not even just them, that they represent in Counter-Strike analysis. So I'm going to make this point very carefully, right? The problem with what happened at the Major for Imperial goes like this. They weren't even supposed to get, obviously, to that second Swiss system. They were supposed to go out in the first one, the new Challenger stage. They weren't supposed to be at the new Legends one. So because they made it one phase of Swiss further, and they were probably the most scrutinised team, in part because their fans make an enormous amount of furore about every result, win or loss, So because of that, right, I actually feel like it made people sort of give them credit for something they didn't do. Like, we almost gave them credit like they made some like epic top 8 run or something. Like, they didn't. Like, not only didn't they do that, but the last match they got completely blown out. It was really embarrassing. So what's mad is, I get why if you look only from a fan sentimental side of like, I'm a huge fan of Fallen, Fur, these sorts, if you're a fan of those players, I get for you why it was a big story and why it's really cool. But the problem is this, when you consider that was one LAN and basically their best result was almost doing something. They didn't actually, realistically, like, in a meaningful sense. So then they've had these 2 LANs since. They had the IM Dallas. They came in last place that people don't know. Now, it's true. They actually did play better teams than you'd probably imagine. They played some hard teams, but they came last place all the same at a whack LAN. And then at this recent LAN now, they didn't even make the playoffs of a tiny little tier 2 LAN, where, again, if you're going to be good, like, these are the LANs you've got to show something. So they've essentially had 3 LANs where overall in totality it's not that great. Now, here's the key point. This isn't just about Imperial. The point is this, Mauisnake. It's going to be very carefully phrased. The problem is this. When essentially you have too many fan favourites, and the fan favourite has even a fluke, I actually get the vibe, I know this is going to sound mad narcissistic, this is where CSGO is going to have a really big trouble that I'm only going to be on Twitter. I'm not going to be at these events. Because if you notice, I actually think these teams have created a black hole of analysis where no other analysts think they can give real analysis. I think people are too scared of the forces of like, fuck, but he is a legendary player. Fuck, but all the fans want them to be good. Like, oh, but they did sort of do a decent job. And the problem is this. People wouldn't analyze, like, people don't analyze Furia the way they analyze Imperial. Furia's a way better team. People don't even analyze this aspect. I think this is a real big deal. The reason why I go harder on Imperial, even though they're legends, is because they get paid loads of money. They get paid more in that team, if you don't know, than top 10 teams in the world. There are really big squads. Teams like ENCE get paid a fucking pittance compared to these guys. So there's another factor. When you know that as well, What are we doing? Like in football, can you imagine this, Mira? If everyone was like, "Oh, don't be mean to Everton. Oh, Everton's like a classic team." It's like, mate, they spent fucking so much money. They should be like top 10, not like bottom of the table. Like, this is the problem. There's two angles to this point. One, I feel like people just won't call out legends because they're scared. And two, that point about money, when you actually know, it's like Evil Genius is the other example. If you know people make good money and they're terrible, I think you actually have to go harder, in my opinion, because you have to do the real sports angle. Like, in the same way as I give ENCE extra credit for being so good on a budget, I have to go the other way and say someone did a terrible job with loads of budget. So you do what you want with that, boys. You can choose where you engage with that and in what way.
Well, I think it would be obviously a lot easier to do our jobs at a and be confident about what we're saying if we knew all these salaries publicly and these contracts.
Oh yes, sure, that's true.
For one,
if it was like Cloud9, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if that would obviously help a lot. I think like with the thing with Imperial is like we're kind of blinded by just the fact that this team it exceeded our expectations one time, and so they've been getting a bit of a pass since then. I haven't really. I think they play actually all right. CS they're just copying strats from other teams. By the way, they're just like when I look at their demos, they just pick and choose a strat that they like from another team, and I think they just are just trying to put that onto their own and put a little spin on it or something like that. I've seen them literally run the exact same A split that like Navi was running and things. So it's not like they're just using old strategies or anything like that and just going through their old motions. Actually, it's that they probably are just always going to be a little bit behind because I don't think they're going as far to innovate now. I think that's my biggest criticism with Imperial today is that they're probably one tournament behind of everybody all the time because they're just going to see who won the last one and then just try to copy paste strats. So I think in terms of individuals though, it's just sometimes it is admittedly sometimes tough to just say like FNX is playing like crap because you say that and suddenly I'm getting sworn at in Portuguese in my Instagram DMs like it's just ridiculous. Like after I've been the target of harassment for just even like when I said stuff about Cloud9.
Obvious joke there would be I didn't know Mira was such a big fan of FNX, but okay, fair enough.
I mean, you're right. After I say like one thing, it's just like, geez, okay, like I need to start just not taking DM requests anymore. Suddenly,
okay,
it kind of changes my life every time I'm critical of one team too hard in one direction.
Oh, you now understand why I told you this years ago. The worst part about being famous in esports is you just don't get to use Twitter anymore. Like,
it's just not the same app anymore for me.
It's not, yeah, exactly. It isn't. It's just a one-way app now, isn't it? It's like I've got two options. One, just read other people's comments, or just read abuse.
Yeah,
that's it, isn't it?
Exactly. Every time I say one thing, like, oh my goodness, when I also said like Rain wasn't a star on like just a ESL Pro League group stage desk, because he was playing badly for the last 3 years. My good, like,
I mean, he isn't a star, but okay.
Yeah, they were just rabid at me. It was just like, oh man, like I've kind of like become a little bit more desensitized to all of this, and that's why I think it's easier for me to put my opinions forward. But you have to get over that first hurdle of like, oh my, like there are people out there that will call for your head just because you insult their favorite player from 4 years ago.
Yes.
I think the biggest issue with Imperial and looking at the way that they played at the major and the way that they played at the other two events is the fact that it's not so much about the quality of the players, but it's about the work that they put in, because everyone practices for a major, everyone prepares for a major, right? And during the 3 or 4 weeks leading up to a major, you think about nothing else but the major, right? But when that event is over, when you come back home, when you go back to a hotel, are you going to put in the same work for a DreamHack Open tournament, for a Pinnacle tournament? You're not going to do that. And I think from what I was told after the major was over, some of the players on Imperial went back to Brazil. I think Fallen went back to North America because he lives there with his wife or girlfriend. I'm not sure. So it's like, I think maybe obviously they exceeded expectations at the major, but they haven't been able to put in as much work for the other two tournaments as they were for the major. So I think that plays a huge factor in the way that they bombed out of the other two events. I'm not obviously the players on Imperial, Fallen, for FNX, they've been around the block for many, many years, right? So I'm not exactly sure if they are still able or willing to put in, 10 to 12 hours before every tournament. And I think that's going to be something that will separate, the contenders from the pretenders. And, obviously everyone prepares for a major, and if another for the Rio tournament, they are going to prepare heavily for that, because they want to be there. They are going to want to experience the support of the crowd. But for these smaller tournaments, I'm not exactly sure if this is the kind of team that will put in the work necessary to be at their best for these types of tournaments.
The only thing is, though, I also think that just means that the narrative doesn't work, because I saw people do that as well at the major, where the corp, by the way, Maui, when they got knocked out of the major, was like, yeah, but this is the first tournament, so they're just building on something. It's like, the project is called The Last Dance. This is supposed to be the end. This year is supposed to be the last year. That's the premise. So what are you talking about? Hey, we're building on something. That's something you say when you got like a young squad, like Mouse Spots or something. We say, well, they will use this experience for years to come. There are no more years. This is the last dance. Secondly, I'll give you that. Oh, okay, at least in CS we have more than one major a year, so you can have the two majors. That's it. After the ESL Rio major, it's over. Otherwise, it wasn't the last dance, was it? Like, the whole premise wasn't that they did the last dance and went, you know what, just have another 3 years, isn't it? Like, that was the last year. So all I'm saying is, even though I know, by the way, spoiler, this is sort of what I'm getting at with the whole criticism of Imperial. They're not really doing the last dance. They don't really believe this team's going to win a major, or that it even could. They just want to, A, make all that sick money I'm referring to, and B, just keep playing as relevant pros. Like, they don't want to be on some shitty side team and end their career with no fanfare at all. So it's whatever on that one. That's just one of those ones where, like, marketing intersects with reality and obviously is shown to be a bunch of nonsense. Right, let's go to the last category now. So, Mira, what was your ugly point here?
My ugly point is about the lack of updates from ESIC about the coach bug. Obviously, there are a lot of rumors out there that XANTARES was the fourth coach, and that he was not banned from the Antwerp major because it was the third person coach bug, and that was the least serious of the three, right? But it's been like 3 weeks since the major, right? And XANTARES was in Dallas. He's going to be in Lisbon for the Blast tournament. What is going on with the investigation right there? There have been I think it was something like 60 coaches who had the third person coach bug, and we have had no updates about it since the major, right? Obviously, I think everyone kind of expected for ESIC to wait out the major and then release something about these new cases, but it has been nothing but radio silence for them, and I just wonder what is going on with the investigation. Right, it has been too long, and we deserve some answers. Also from ESIC about why it took them, almost a year to come out with the findings of their investigation into the coach bug, because some of the coaches were banned. 3 coaches were banned suspended right before the major, and they had this information since March 2021, right? So why did it take them this long to come out with the findings? I think we deserve some answers.
I love when they had, like you said, they had the information that these guys cheated, and then they just decided to release it at the major. I think that was them trying to say, hey, look at us, everybody, look at us in this incredibly impactful moment. We're doing our job. But then people just recognize how negligent they were prior to this moment. I might hijack this point, but so I want Thorin to just go first, because I have other things I would say about ESIC. So
I mean, the only problem with this one is this, Mira, which is like, even though we have loads we can say, you can imagine on this show, in both the bad and ugly sections, ESIC is quite a popular fucking term. Like on the bingo card, that would definitely be one that we've done a lot of times. So I would just say, in general, I echo the sentiments. Like, one thing, I'll give some real actionable advice that I've given many times before. This is why what they genuinely need most of all is some sort of a community liaison figure. In a dream world, it won't be, but in a dream world, it would actually be like Richard Lewis or something like that. That would be the absolute dream person. And the premise goes, this is someone who can directly interface with the community. So, for example, when a player says something in an interview, it isn't just all of us on shows like, wow, Stickles comments, what does that mean for us? Like, they can just come out and address it and say, well, here, we appreciate this player's things. Here's what we're going to do about it. And you have an idea that because it's someone from the community, essentially, here's the real problem ESIC has. Spirit, even though they said it in a hyperbolic fashion, they're right. Who is ESIC? If someone says to me, well, ESIC says this, I can just go, who the fuck is ESIC? Remember, I've been here 20 years, I can say that. There's just some fucking guy literally a guy from South Africa called Ian Smith. Like, already it sounds like some fucking Black Mirror episode, mate, but okay. I'll accept that premise isn't ridiculous. Like, when the fucking Nintendo CEO is called Bowser, like, yeah, I'll just believe this is reality. Definitely not in a fucking shit virtual reality game right now. But okay, in this scenario, right, that's the problem I have, is they don't have natural credibility because they haven't done anything. They've only done a couple of cases and they've sort of half scuffed a few of them. So if you have someone like Richard, this is why Sir Scoot's being involved with CSPPA was important early on. You can sort of lend their credibility in the early phase because the premise goes, maybe when Richard talks to him privately, he hears something that's legit that we don't know because they do a bad job communicating it. Without having that, at this point in time, I feel like a lot of people are out on ESIC and that the vibe now is like, which I think is the worst one ever, the vibe now sort of goes like, well, I mean, I don't really like what they do and how they handle it, but it's better than nothing. That can't be where we're at, guys. Like, that's a terrible standard to have. Like, that's not what you want at all, because eventually, by the way, that'll become a problem in itself, because the problem becomes, if they really end up being, like, just not very good at their jobs, actually having better than nothing isn't good. It'll end up occupying a space that someone else could have made the same project, but better, and maybe funded it better or had... So I think generally communication is their number one problem. It seems like also, have you noticed another thing that keeps coming up? Is they keep acting as though they do have like true ultimate jurisdiction and that they can say, right, here's our ruling and our ruling is final. Well, it isn't, is it? Because as soon as we have these court cases and you have to suddenly meet with the guy and then have an appeal, it's like, then it isn't final. So market scenario, here's my problem as well. If you already know there's this possibility, why not just allow more communication? Like, it sounds to me like some of these people, like the peacemakers of the world, have to sort of make their case public and sort of push ESIC, and then ESIC will have the convo with you or will respond to the thing. But until you do that, there's a vibe of sort of like we made our decision and it's final. So I think the whole thing sounds to me like there might be some real like logistic aspects of do they have enough people? Do they have enough funding? Are they competent enough? But my bigger issue is, like you said, it's the radio silence. It's the fact that like it's CSPPA all over again. Why am I sat here like, dude, I'm hooked into the scene and I don't know what's going on with these fucking orgs. Like, what is this shit? Like, if you're someone in the public, I can't even imagine what a random fan's thinking. Like, imagine if you don't even watch any of the talk shows. You'd have almost no info about ESIC. You just hear the occasional news post, they ban some people, and you're like, okay. Like, I think that's the terrible look to me, is like, in CSGO especially, because it's not a game where the game dev's the tyrant, this can be the game where you can have the really cool setup with people from the community that actually do it the right way. We don't have to be like, well, they own the IP, so it's their rules. Like, we don't have to be like that in CSGO, guys. We could be so much cooler.
Problem is that, yeah, they're underfunded, yeah, they're understaffed, but, how long can they still continue to use that excuse, right?
Agreed, yeah.
And right now, I think that the Peacemaker case changed the game for everyone,
yes.
Right?
Sounds like anyone who lawyers up now can potentially just push their ban down, right?
I've talked to a few coaches and they're lawyering up. And so I expect a lot of drama in the coming weeks because, maybe that's the reason why we haven't had any updates about the coach bug investigation, because everyone's lawyering up and ESIC is going to have a hard time to recover from this. To be honest, I don't even know if they'll ever recover their credibility after what happened here.
So the thing I was gonna maybe hijack here was the fact that we talked about this before, the NA match fixing type of stuff, and how they opened a ticket system in September 15th, 2020. They last updated this August 23rd, 2021. But like, it's just so funny how the guy we talked about before, Marv, who is implicated in a lot of match fixing sort of stuff back in Premiere, just won the Valorant championship.
Yep. Essentially like a world championship of Valorant, like a mini one, but yeah.
It's just so unreasonable, this whole sequence of events. Because I think I was bringing it up maybe legitimately 9 months ago, like, hey, this guy's having a crazy career and popping off, and there probably should be at least like some sort of wrist slap here for him, and just
fuck a wrist slap. His career should essentially have had that moment. Like, he should have had the Will Smith thing. Essentially, ESIC should have just slapped him in his face when he's at the height of his Valorant career. That should be what happens to this guy. Fucking what is this bullshit?
Yeah, exactly.
Gets to be the world champion.
There's no consequences at all.
I know, it's mental, isn't it?
Yeah. And just imagine what happened with Peacemaker, that his ban was lifted because he was able to prove that he did not convey any information to his players. Imagine if this had happened to Robin, who was not able to celebrate the major victory with his players because he was banned for the major. because he had the bug, and for all we know, he didn't convey any information to his players.
No.
But it was super sad
to
see a legend of the game like Robin, who has been around the boxes since the early 2000s, not able to celebrate or even help his players to win a major because it was still banned. It was around it was at the venue. He was able to join up with the players after the victory, but not being there on stage with them was super sad.
It could have even cost him the title, dude. Like, people don't even think about that angle, do they? like, here's the thing, imagine if you're FaZe and you don't win, and then right after you hear that people just get unbanned anyway. Like, what? What have we just put up with all that for? What the fuck? Because that's probably the dumbest thing about that entire topic. Is the other thing that they've done is this. And to be fair, actually, this is what game devs tend to do, which makes people think game devs are a bit capricious. Is there's also, it doesn't feel to me at least, like I don't get the vibe that there really is a set, like, here's the metrics of like what the punishment is and how bad it is. It still feels to me like it's very hit and miss as to what someone gets punished for and for how long and in what way. Like I don't myself feel like I even know the internal rules still. And I've looked at loads of these cases. Right, whatever, anyway. Maui, what was your ugly? This is also, by the way, this could have been in anyone's, I'm sure, so I could see this one coming. So what was your ugly here?
Mine is just the way this whole Boomich situation is unfolding. Mostly the way I would kind of characterize it is it's almost just revenge porn in all senses. The way that basically how his ex-wife now, I don't know if the divorce is finalized necessarily, but either way, the soon-to-be ex-wife of Boomich has leaked all of these videos of him. I think naked. I think he also the video of him doing what is probably an illicit substance. And I think the reaction to it is there's two different parts of this for me. There's one that's just like the reaction to it and what it just means for his entire career. The reaction to it is more like just what people are saying on Twitter and Reddit and stuff like that about like. He's using these drugs, and so he's bad, or he's just like, he's messed up or something like that. Like, it's just so short-sighted, and it's just like, just low IQ takes. Like, that's just how I'll put it, where people are basically just saying he's a bad guy because he does this drug, where it's like, that doesn't, like, there's no morality in using an illicit substance, really. Like, there's nothing really wrong about that. Like, you can't really prove in an ethical or moral sense that by using that, you're a bad person. And I think that it's kind of the second part, I guess, is that because of this, though, he's probably not going to get on a team anytime soon. Like, because she released him doing this stuff, people are going to look at that as he is because he got released from Na'Vi already. But I thought but I think now it's like conflating information about they took him out of the team because of. Do you guys have the quote? It was something like just. Outside
reputational risks for the club.
Yes, reputational risk for the club. And what that was to me prior to this was that he was dating, or he was married to a woman that was posting Russian tanks on her Instagram. And so him being associated with her was a bad look for a Ukrainian organization. And now I think that sort of the reputational risk is being changed by the public narrative now that he is actually, it's because he's a drug abuser or something like that, which I think is almost what she wants people to believe, that she's shifting what the perception of Boomich is because she's releasing this sort of footage out there. And I think that's really not, in my perception of it, it wasn't why Boomich was released from Na'Vi. I'm sure they have more information as to why he was a reputational risk, but from everything I was getting in from rumors and things I'm hearing from players and people close to the scene and the organization, it was more just he had a wife that was doing a lot of stuff that was not kosher.
And apparently, there's more to come. I think she has posted on Telegram that she has more stuff that maybe will come out eventually. But
is this illegal?
I don't know. Well, and one thing that not a lot of people have noticed, that she said that he assaulted her. She said that she knocked a tooth. So not many people picked up on that. So it's not just drug use; it's also assault. But from what I was told, Na'Vi expected something like this to come. Maybe this not the entirety of it, and more stuff could come out in the future. I don't know. He said that he's going to file lawsuits against maybe her and some other people. But from what I was told, Navi knew that this was going to happen eventually.
Okay. First things first, right? Being asked, like, I didn't make all the stuff public, but it just is now public. If you just want to get an interesting / brutal take on this whole scenario, but that also, this is the secondary element, shows you, spoiler, no one really changes that much. Like, there isn't really a new simple. What we mean by that is he just got a little bit more shrewd about when not to say certain things, or when to do a fake smile, or when to actually just make yourself, like, just fucking shake the hand of someone who beat you, basically. The reason you know there isn't really a new simple is if you saw the video where Simple responds to this situation on stream, it is fucking hilarious. Like, you can imagine the words he might use to describe this woman. You'll just have to go watch it for yourself. It's just worth watching, okay? Like, it's just stupid as fuck, so watch it anyway. But then secondly, first of all, I also like how naive Maui is, where he doesn't realise how ridiculously, like first of all, like, what an Anglosphere comment that is, like, where he's from. It's when he was saying there, Mira, he was going, there's no moral component in taking drugs, or whether you, I don't know if you know this, Maui, I would say, you know, most of the greatest religions of all time absolutely do prescribe a moral component to taking drugs, believe it or not, Maui. Actually. That's actually, I would say, sort of a fundamental, you can almost say like commandment or tenet that, you know, could indeed not only affect like your life now, but all your eternal life of your soul, believe it or not. I know you didn't know the stakes were that high when you just did that cheeky little, we've all sniffed really fast, that's all I'm going to say. We've all had a really fast sniff, but believe it or not, it can carry consequences. No, but what I would say more seriously is this. There's two elements I want to make a point on. One is this. It's actually more from sort of a journalism perspective, so maybe Mira himself might have a comment on this. One thing I try to do a very careful job with is I always try to check my protocols of what a journalist can and cannot comment on, and in what capacity, whether it's public, private, like am I doing it off a broadcast as part of my work. So one thing that might seem like, to other people this might seem like an irrelevant distinction, but this is a key distinction to me. Because Boomich himself in no way made any of this information public, right, I personally do not believe it is in the public's interest to know if Boomich takes illegal drugs. I don't think it is anyone's business in Counter-Strike, for example, whether they're an investor or a fan, whether Boomich has an STD. I don't think that is anyone's business at all. So personally, like in general, just watch for this. I'm actually probably not going to make, for example, even jokes on Twitter about this or reference it as like part of the sort of grist for the mill of making jokes on shows, etc. Because essentially I treat this as information I shouldn't know. This information shouldn't be out there. It's different in this case, right? Someone like dev1ce made his relationship public in a way where if people then comment on some of those things, some of that is in the public domain, mate. You made that public. You let, like, another example, if you were from League of Legends, would be when Lena, who was the president of TSM at the time, let everyone know she was dating Doublelift, who was a player at the time for Team Liquid, but later for TSM. Again, now people absolutely, it's totally reasonable people comment on that. You put it in the public sphere, it's even, you've essentially publicised it yourself. So one is, I do think in general, I know we can't do this, but we should essentially make all your comments now, get your stuff out the way, but in general, we should essentially try and forget this if we can and treat Boomich just based on who he was as a professional esports player. And then the other thing I would say is this, which is, this is just a more general point, and it goes like this. This is why there's a very important lesson you can take from this case if you're just a man watching this show. And I would even throw in a couple of obvious examples. How about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case? Or let me think, what would another good one be? In theory, anyone who's super duper famous, Kanye West would be a fucking perfect example. The mistake here, guys, isn't what happens at the end of the relationship. It isn't how it breaks down and the specific things they argued about, or the mistake these men have made, in my opinion, is this. They did a terrible job at the beginning. Their actual choice of spouse seems really inappropriate for what they wanted in their lives. Like, if they wanted a life without drama, if they wanted a life with a nice family at home, if they wanted someone who's just going to be like a cool partner, who's not going to, they picked terribly. Like, and that's just something, look, I know it might sound like a harsh point, but just look at how it bore out. Look at the fucking fruits that these trees bore. So I would say is that the real life lesson here, guys, is don't get caught up in all the drama of all the rest of it. Just understand when someone shows you mad red flags at the beginning. I purposely picked those 3 cases because all those people are showing you constant and crazy red flags. Believe the red flags. Like, the problem with that is you're going to look so stupid later when you're like, because here's the problem. You can't, if you're now Boomich, turn around and go, how could I have known? It's like, bro, this happened before you even got married to her. Like, he could have known, I'm afraid. And listen, I feel sorry for you. Obviously, everyone hopes it all works out, but like, this is a real life lesson like people can take away that's nothing to do with esports. Just be genuinely one of the most important decisions you ever make in your life is someone who's going to be your partner, someone who's going to be a spouse, potentially a long-term relationship. Like, don't do that frivolously. Don't do that based on any stupid MTV video like she had a fat ass in the club. Like, yeah, tell you what, that fucking ass will be bolder in your head later on when it fucking turns out 3 years later. Do you want that fucking money for that kid, mate? So just keep it under wraps and be reasonable. That would be my advice there. Be reasonable. In all senses, be reasonable to Boomich as well, like I say. I know it's fucked up, because the problem with this is some of this stuff naturally is just funny for young men, in it. Like, oh, Lord, we saw his dick or whatever. Like in that, and by the way, if you listen to it on that Telegram channel, she even claims later that might not even have been a picture of him. So it doesn't really seem like the most good faith actor of all time. He's just disappeared for a second.
One of the worst parts about it is the impact that this will have on his career, right? Because there are many teams out there who can pick him up because of the Iron Curtain, right?
Yes.
Most likely have to go back a tier and compete for a small Russian team to be able to continue his career, which is very sad. And you have to wonder if this is not one of the biggest what-if stories in Counter-Strike in recent years, because it was bad enough for Na'Vi when they had their 5-man roster and they were still dealing with the fact that 3 of the players are from Russia, 2 are from Ukraine, and there was a war going on. Right now, they just lost their IGL, and they're going to have to replace him, and they're considering giving the reins over to Electronic, and we have to wonder what kind of team Na'Vi will be at the end of this, to be honest.
Sure.
And if Na'Vi will ever be the same team, maybe they won't. I have my doubts about it.
Actually, to touch on just the team itself, if they get Buster for Boomich, which
you know what, Maui, here's a go. I can't blow it when the moment's there, right? I'll waste a joke on this show that's straight fire. It's just tiny bit edgy, isn't it? Which is, when people say that thing all the time, Mauisnake, on Reddit, like if they hear about the ESL Impact tournament, all guys will go in there like, oh, women fucking suck at these sports. Like they could never even compete in a qualifier. What are you talking about? 2 women alone took down 2 of the greatest CSGO teams of all time, Astralis and Na'Vi. Yeah. Women can do anything they put their minds to, whatever.
All right.
That's pretty good. I kept it safe at the end. Like, listen, it's mad edgy topic, but I kept it safe. Kept it safe for it. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good angle. All I'm saying is, apparently, Team Liquid, that you know which 2 people to pick up next. Like, those were the squads.
It's coming from inside. Yeah,
I know it is. Yeah. Right. Okay, let's do it then. So, on mine. What was your point? Sorry, you were making a final point there.
No, it's fine.
No, don't worry about that. Yeah.
Right,
we'll go to the last one then, because mine's actually a pretty wide open one. We can go anywhere on this one as the last topic. Right, this is what's weird, because it's going to sound like I'm sort of taking my good point and making it the ugly one here, but I've phrased it very carefully. I've phrased it as, I think the ugly point for me is that people are going to take from the 2 stand-in cases of JKS replacing Rain and fucking Rops for FaZe and winning the tournament, and Snacks standing in for Spinks. And I've already seen them do it, dude. They're already now spinning a counter-narrative that goes like this. It's actually sometimes easier to perform when you've got a stand-in. It's like, these are the exceptions that prove the rule, guys. Like, in theory, of course, it's way worse to have one of your best players. Like in the case of like the Rops and Spinks ones, these were the best players going out the lineup as well. Like, to me, the idea that in any way it's easy to play with a stand-in or they can just plug and play. Like, first of all, I don't think so at all. Like, I actually, for real, with those 2 cases, Carrigan and Snappy, I put mad credit on the fucking IGL and the coaching stuff there. That like, because if you notice again, if you go and look at the interviews, they all had their own approaches. Like I've heard in FaZe, they moved people around so they could make the guy comfortable. Then in Snacks' case, maybe he just played some of the spots on Nuke already. So like the philosophy of how you do it to me is very interesting. I don't think at all it's the idea you just walk in and everyone just plays well. So I just don't like the idea that narrative now might get out of control and people now we're going to make it like it's easier when you have the stand. Everyone should take a stand in. It's like, no, having a stand in is obviously a massive disadvantage in most cases. Even you could argue in some of these cases we'll never know what the team would have done with the real player. For all we know, maybe FaZe will even better at Katowice with Rain. We can't know. That's the real problem, right?
Right. I mean, the thing is, you look at some of the other cases at this event itself. ZTR had to play for Hampus. Who else? I guess MIBR were playing with their coach, but that wasn't like as big of a thing for me. But Big playing with Keto even instead of Crimbo recently at the Pinnacle event. The teams look worse. Like they're just obviously worse and in worse positions because of that. It's just like the nature of what's going on in our ecosystem right now with COVID and visa issues and people not being able to arrive. It's almost like there's so many stand-in cases that have to happen that eventually some of them will be, there's just like at this almost if you look at Dallas, there's 3 out of 16 teams, just percentage wise chance one of those teams might have a decent run, especially if they're already coming from a really solid foundation. So it's just, yeah, that's a pretty backwards approach and reasoning if you think like playing with a stand-in helps in any possible way. Like so many teams, when they talk about the worst moments in their roster are when they know they're going to get a new player, because they just know it's not even a stand-in. They're just playing with a team that they know is basically dead. It's really hard for people to get motivated. It's hard for people to put in the same effort because everybody knows that you're probably not going to consider those results with the same sort of esteem once you get your new roster. And I guess in some cases it helps in terms of you loosen up, but it for the most part it means that you're putting in 70%.
Yeah, and I think no one knows for sure how good FaZe would have been in Katowice had they had their full roster, right? They were already looking very good heading into the tournament, and I think maybe if they had Robs at the beginning and then Rain towards the end, maybe they would have done even better. That no one knows for sure, right? I think this is a bad take, and just because ENCE did as well as they did, and just because FaZe won the tournament with JKS as a stand-in, that's no reason for us to go out and say that teams should have a stand-in at all times.
By the way, as just a random aside, Maui, did it actually low-key trigger you? Because it did when I saw this. When they put ZTR back in and he actually played really well, it's like, do you motherfuckers at NiP just hate winning or something? What is this? Like, why was the Sporzy guy and the Linus guy in the team for like a year? The ZTR guy actually showed potential even when he came in the funny first time. This guy should have just been in the team the whole time, dude. If we knew what we knew now, he should have just had a run of like 9 months in this squad, shouldn't he? The fuck?
Yeah, somehow ZTR seems to play better against the better competition he's up against. It's actually one of those rare cases where it seems like if he plays against dumb players, things catch him off more, but when he plays against literally the best players in the world, he'll actually have the occasional 20 bomb. Like when he played against Astralis in his debut, I feel like he also just kind of farmed complexity too. Like he just kind of shows he's clearly a tier above in a lot of respects. Yeah, I think ZTR has been pretty legit. I was down on ZTR before he originally got that chance on NiP, but after he started playing with them for a while, like I basically became a prisoner of the moment. I was like, okay, this guy's killing it, and I would like to see more ZTR, but they just did they just won that Get event too, the Dubai event. So yeah, this guy, I mean, he's legit. He's for sure.
It was weird because last year he helped NiP to reach the final in Flashpoint 3, you know, and after that he was cut from the team. They brought in the other players from the academy, and it was like everyone forgot about ZTR, which was a huge shame, right? But I'm happy to see him compete for the main team again, and I think we will see more of him in the future, hopefully.
I'll tell you one thing about I talked to DJL actually a decent amount at Dallas, and he kind of didn't know what to expect.
Head coach at NiP, in case people don't know.
The coach in NiP. I talked to him a decent amount at Dallas about ZTR, and at first DJL gave ZTR basically protocols for everything, almost a flow chart saying, hey, if this happens, you'd call this. If this happens, you call this. Basically made his life incredibly easy. But after working with him for just a couple days, he said, okay, this guy is a very complete IGL, and he can just take the reins entirely. Like, I don't need to hold his hand with it. So he gained the respect of DJL, who I think DJL is responsible for the reason that NiP has had improved T-sides in 2022. And if he thinks that ZTR is a very legit caller, I almost am willing to, I wouldn't even think it's too crazy to think that as a caller alone, not in terms of his entire comprehensive, what he brings in the server as a player, he's probably better than Hampus. In terms of just the tactical side of things.